Guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be reacting to
Well, the big beautiful bill Bankrupt America.
On Tuesday morning, in a race to get it through Congress before Trump's self-imposed 4th of July deadline, the US Senate passed its amended version of the One Big Beautiful Bill, the 1,000-page mega bill crammed with essentially all of Trump's campaign pledges. The original version of this bill, which was narrowly passed by the House of Representatives in May, was already pretty controversial, even among Republicans, largely because of its impact on the national debt. However, this new version passed by the Senate looks set to be even more controversial, with a number of provisions that, according to most economists, will further benefit the richest Americans, cut benefits from the poorest, and put even more strain on America's public finances. So in this video, we're going to take a look at this new version of the BBB, why it looks arguably worse, and whether Trump will be able to force it through Congress. Getting ever closer to subscribe today, so let's get straight into it. Perhaps the most important difference between this version of the BBB and the last one is that it actually strains America's public finances even further. The original version of the BBB, passed in May, was already pretty expensive. The Nonpartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, for instance, estimated that it would add $2.4 trillion to the national debt over the next 10 years, and that's excluding increased debt servicing costs. And that's largely thanks to the costs of extending Trump's 2017 tax cuts, which were due to expire over the next couple of years. While pinning down precise figures for the Senate version is difficult because so many amendments have been thrown around and the final version only passed about 24 hours ago, both the Congressional Budget Office and Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget have previously estimated that it would add an additional $800 billion to the national debt over the next 10 years. And that's on top of the $2.4 trillion from the original bill. This will take the US debt to GDP ratio up to 150%, one of the highest in the world. This is largely because the Senate version has pared back certain...
if they're still...
He said that anybody who votes for this bill, he's gonna fund their competitors when they run. So in the elections, whoever gonna have to get reelected, he's gonna fund their competition.
spending cuts that was spooking Senate Republicans.
So 200 plus people might lose their seats. I don't know. That's what he said. You know, talking is one thing, doing is another thing.
Including to rural hospitals and farming.
That's a flex.
And because the Senate version includes a couple of further tax cuts, mostly centered around state and local tax or SALT deductions. For context, the SALT deduction allows taxpayers to deduct certain taxes paid to state and local governments from their federal taxable income. The specifics are pretty complicated, but the TLDR is that this generally benefits rich people in high-tax states, like New York or California, and it's currently capped at $10,000 per year per household. But the House version of the BBB wants to raise this to $40,000 for households earning less than $500,000 a year, which would basically benefit those earning between $150,000 and $500,000. But the Senate version goes even further.
So it's basically allowing people to deduct the tax that you already paid from the income. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I mean, obviously I see how it's going to add more debt, but logically thinking,
say again.
So whatever you pay, like if you pay state tax, like let's say Florida doesn't have a tax, but if you live in Georgia, you pay $10K to Georgia for a state tax, income tax. They allow you now to deduct that $10K from the federal tax. I mean, if I was,
That's so odd.
I don't have a problem.
So why
with that
pay?
per
Then
se.
why tell people pay in the first place?
No, you pay to the state now,
Yeah.
and then there's federal tax, right? IRS. So now basically whatever you paid to Georgia, they allow you to deduct from the IRS. That's how I understand it. That don't sound too bad. I mean, what I don't like about it, because it's kind
I
of...
don't get it.
What don't you get?
So, okay, now you deducted from your federal taxes.
So you have to pay less in federal tax. Because you already paid tax on that amount in locally. Which to me is common sense.
So it's like a discount
Well,
that you have to pay.
well, it's an additional expense that you had, which is
So
an
will that
expense.
make people? So will that make people want to like stay in their state tax country?
Yes, that would make less people move to Florida. Yes.
Oh,
So now you like it?
you know, it's so confusing, people.
Well, okay. So and I didn't even think
So
about
now
that.
in New York, okay, so for example, in New York, if you paid the state of New York Now
So
you
now you
get
have
that
to.
money.
So you kind of get partially that a little bit of that money back with federal tax. Not you don't get it back, but you deduct your federal tax, so you're gonna have more money in your pocket a
He's
little
not
bit.
offering any advice. Okay, financial advice.
Yeah, yeah. There's no financial. So two thoughts about this. One, I don't like that this only benefits certain states, like Florida don't have income
Well,
tax,
the only
so
benefit
that
is
doesn't
that it
benefit
can
anybody
attract
here.
someone to stay in their
But
state tax state.
but what I do like about this
Because
is
the
that
reason is a lot of people move over to non-stated tax.
we have way too many people moving to Florida
Yeah.
because it doesn't have income state tax.
Mhm.
So now if this is gonna help people keeping them back in their New Yorks and Californias, I'm for it.
Further, and protects a series of workarounds that
Now the fact that it's gonna increase the debt, that's a problem. So that's a problem. But yeah.
allow rich people to avoid the cap altogether, thus avoiding paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal taxes. All in all, the Senate's version of the BBB will cost the bottom 20% of taxpayers an average of $560 a year, but it will give an average boost of $6,055 to those on the top end, according to analysis by Yale's
I
budget.
don't understand. So
A
why
co-
would it cost to lower income taxes? Why would it add taxes to them? That part I don't get.
Cost which will be funded with yet more debt.
Honestly,
Well, the White
I
House will
feel
argue
like
that
they
at least some of
themselves don't really understand because
I'm trying to follow.
there's so much going. I think they don't understand it.
this new debt should be offset by new tariff revenues. This would still imply that the US is continuing to run deficits of at least 6% of GDP for the foreseeable future. And that's before you even take into account the negative impact that most economists expect tariffs to have on GDP growth. Now, this is both unsustainable and way above the 3% deficit that Scott Bessent promised during the campaign. It's also restarted an ongoing feud between Trump and Elon Musk, who's taken to X to attack the bill's fiscal implications and again threatened to create a new America party or fund primary challenges against Republicans who vote for the bill.
Right, that's what I said.
Now, to offset some of these costs, the updated BBB also includes more cuts to welfare spending. These are mostly aimed at Medicaid, which provides health coverage to poorer Americans via a combination of stricter eligibility
that's a
requirements
problem.
and cuts to the so-called provider tax. Now, to be fair, the provider tax is a bit mad. It's basically a way for state governments and local hospitals to conspire to squeeze more money out of the federal government.
Really?
In short, the federal government pays for half of all Medicaid costs. So a procedure that costs $100 at a hospital should cost the state government $50 and the federal government $50. However, most states squeeze more money out of the federal government by putting a provider tax on hospitals, then letting them charge inflated fees. For example, if the state imposes a 10% provider tax, the hospital will increase its prices to $110, and then the state government will collect $10. Paying the provider $110 instead of $100 and then collecting the extra $10 in tax may seem pointless. But because the cost of the operation has nominally gone up from $100 to $110, the federal government will now contribute $55 instead of $50, which is beneficial to the state. Now, the new version of the
Well, that's interesting. Looks like the states are running schemes with the hospitals.
I mean,
Is that what's happening here?
did you not see Luigi Mangoni?
Because this is a scheme right here.
Okay.
BBB will incrementally reduce the allowable provider tax to 3.5%, down from 6% in
But
the
if
House
you
bill.
do that, they say you're committing fraud.
But it's not. It's legal.
No,
the
but
state is doing it.
yeah, the state doing it. But if you were to do something
right,
like
right.
that,
Yeah, double standard. Like if a person does it
if
or a
you charge
business
for
does
services,
it,
yeah,
but
and
if
you
a state does it, oh, it's
inflate
okay.
the price.
Yeah, it's cool.
With the drawdown beginning in 2028. Nonetheless, even if the provider tax is a bit silly, it still effectively implies a steep cut to Medicaid spending, given that provider taxes account for about 10% of all federal Medicaid funding, and as much as 35% in some states like Utah. All in all, the congressional budget
I mean, obviously, cutting Medicaid funding is bad, but what I kind of hope, maybe wishful thinking, will make the hospitals lower the prices, because the hospitals charge whatever. Like they just charge whatever because
no, they make up the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. They make up the numbers because they know, oh, the government is gonna cover it. So if you're gonna drop the coverage, maybe wishful thinking, maybe the hospitals would start charging less. Please, come on.
office estimates that the bill would increase the number of uninsured Americans by nearly 12 million people by 2035. The vital difference between the two versions of the BBB worth mentioning concerns energy. That's because the House version of the BBB included the withdrawal of billions of dollars from the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, a Biden-era legislation that introduced massive subsidies and tax cuts for domestic investments in renewable energy and nuclear power. Now, this was already causing some consternation
And that's why Musk is mad.
among not just climate-conscious progressives, but also Republicans in states experiencing IRA-induced manufacturing booms in clean energy. But the original Senate version of the BBB went one step further, with an
Wait, so what's gonna happen to companies who focus on clean energy?
They're gonna lose the subsidies. They're gonna lose the tax cuts, I think.
Why? Because they're contributing for a clean.
Well, they don't care about clean energy. They like their oil.
I thought they encouraged it. Oh.
No, it's the Republicans. They like their oil.
Oh.
excise tax on new renewable projects, but this was stripped out at the last minute. Nonetheless, the latest version still implies
So what's the child? So why are you
a
talking
rapid
about it?
phase out of IRA subsidies, undermining investor confidence and the climate transition. Conversely, the new bill includes a tax breaks for metallurgical coal, with Trump's energy secretary saying that he imagines coal, natural gas, and nuclear to be the future of America's energy system. Unsurprisingly, numerous polls have found that the BBB is deeply unpopular and fares terribly with independents. A Fox News poll from last month, for instance, found that just 22% of independents support the BBB, while 73% oppose it. Nonetheless, even if it's unpopular with the wider public, the threat of a Trump-backed primary challenger will probably force Republicans into line. All of this plays into a broader
Yeah, so guys, today the House passed it. We just got notification. So it seems like this is going to be the law. Yeah.
I wonder what is that, how everyone will feel about this and their perspective. I guess you'll find out once you actually
Well-
see like people losing their Medicaid.
We just saw the polls. Only 22% of independents approve it. Like it seems like people don't want it.
Can I see the comment?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little confusing. I mean, it is like 900 some pages, so there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's hilarious how Republican senators will openly be like, I hate this bill, then vote to pass. Yep. It's called the Big Beautiful Bill because it's going to drop America's credit rating to BBB. His voters are a strange bunch. I want to pay more in taxes and have less healthcare so billionaires can have more money. It's just, I don't get why people would pay more in taxes though in here. Like what in this bill makes people pay more in taxes? That part I didn't get. I see like the rich are getting some sort of tax cut, which is income
I
tax.
guess the distribution of like again like the who's paying most of the taxes is not billionaires really.
Well, the distribution, yeah, but in terms of like dollars that you have to pay, it's not gonna change. It's just percentage wise, in terms of all tax collected, the poor is gonna end up paying larger population. Larger proportion, yes. But in terms of how much the poor have to pay, it's gonna be the same. It's just the downside is gonna be that the debt is gonna get higher because we're collecting now less taxable income. That's how I see it. I don't. It's 900 pages. It's not as straightforward by any means.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord, and as always, share as much kindness as possible. Bye, guys.